welcome to the second ELSA Vilnius STEP podcast, where we talk about everything related to student trainee exchange program here in After STEP. I'm your host, Dominika. I'm a board member in ELSA Vilnius. And in today's podcast, we have two important guests that are here to give us their first-hand experience, both in STEP to some and in general about internships in foreign countries to others. Thus, let me introduce our first guest, Lyra Jakulievičienė, the Dean of Mykolas Romeris University Law School, who has done her internship actually a while ago in Stockholm, United Nations, as I understood, and welcome. Thank you for finding some time to join us. And also here we have Gabriel Paulus, who is frequently finished his traineeship in Kaunas in law firm Teisės Riba. And Gabriel is actually one of our newest interns in Lithuania who applied through STEP. So thank you too for finding time in your schedule. And hopefully we'll have a great discussion, informative one. I think we could start with first questions and more detailed introduction. So to get a better understanding, I'd like to ask you to tell us, why did you decide to apply for an internship? What thoughts actually ran through your head while studying at university before your traineeship and maybe during the application process? Lyra, maybe you could start.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me to this experience sharing, as I understood, event. And you might wonder why experience of such an aged person is important for young people. But of course, my internship was already presented, was really a while ago. I will not tell how many years ago, because I think you will not listen to me. But I'm pretty sure that during the conversation, you will understand why ELSA Vilnius has invited me to this conversation. So if you listen throughout it, you will get that answer. Now, if I would try to think about this many years ago, what was on my mind when I decided to go for internship at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees regional office in Stockholm, in Sweden, then of course I remember that moment very well, because it was not something very much planned. It was almost like a nice accident. It was very accidental. That and the organization that I have to blame for is namely ELSA, because at that time I was studying at Vilnius University. I was a student there, and maybe because I was more interested in international law, in international affairs, was more open than the other students who maybe were more interested in national law. I was more open to various opportunities. And my colleagues from ELSA, they said, look, there is this internship. Nobody wants to go. It's in Stockholm. It's for 6 months. Can't you go? And that was the moment when I just came back from the moot court competition from International Court of Justice. So I was, kind of feeling quite well after this international exposure. And even if I was quite a shy person at that time, I thought, okay, if it's needed, I would go. So it was not really something that I was planning or that I was dreaming about. It was just a coincidence that nobody was willing to go, and I decided to go. So maybe I just stop here, because otherwise, I would speak quite a lot. So just to give also the opportunity for Gabriel.
Yes, I think that's very interesting what you said, because my story is quite different, I would say. First of all, it's quite recent. I returned to Austria just approximately 3 weeks ago, so it's still very recent, my internship. And I wouldn't say it was an accident, because I really wanted to make an internship abroad. I've already been abroad for several times during my school time already, but once you go abroad, you will always want to go abroad even more. I think everybody who knows this experience can subscribe to that. And but what was more of an incident is that I actually ended up in Lithuania, because I did not really know where I actually wanted to go, because there were so many countries at the step. At the end, I just thought I like more the Nordic countries and more the Nordic climate. So I'm just going to go to Lithuania. That was actually the basic idea behind it. And my internship was definitely not as long. It was 1 month after all. And yes, I think it's very exciting that it was still possible despite COVID, because as everybody knows, many internships are currently being cancelled. But still, luckily, I had a talk with my internship provider at the law firm Theises Riba in Kaunas, and she said that for her it's okay if I still come, nevertheless, which was very good, because I can now already say it was one of the best. It was really one of the best times of my life. I'm not exaggerating, because I had a really good time in Lithuania. It was exciting. Yeah, so I'm very glad that it was possible. Yeah, and nevertheless, I think it was also the work as such was quite different from what I was doing before, because I've already done several internships at law firms, mostly at larger law firms. So this was actually the first time that I ended up in a small law firm, because at Theises Riba we were actually 4 employees and 1 chef. So we were we were really a small law firm, but this experience was also very good. I liked it.
Okay, thank you. It's very nice to hear you enjoyed your traineeships. And for this question, I'd like to ask you, Lyra, and talking about the experience in the UN, how did it went? What maybe tasks you had, and talk about something like this.
First of all, I would like to reflect on what Gabriel was saying, that he was kind of inspired also about the climate in the Nordics. While for me, actually, the climate in Sweden in many years now, we have pretty much the same. But actually, was the most difficult thing. That's why I could not stay for 6 months, and I came back earlier. But not because something else was wrong, but simply it was difficult experience in also some respects. That's why I think it's very important, before you take this decision, to take many aspects into account, so that you are well prepared, because this experience is something very different from doing an internship at the national level, or even in a neighboring country. But if I would turn to back to your question, what were the tasks? So at that moment that I was doing the internship, it was very much a historical moment that I could participate, because this Office of the United Nations is a special UN office, which is working with refugees, asylum seekers, migrants. And at that time, Lithuania was just establishing its asylum system, the protection system for refugees and asylum seekers. So I was working on issues related to the establishment of national legislation, to collecting information on the situation in the Baltic countries, because I was tasked with the 3 Baltic countries, not just with Lithuania. So I was producing the newsletter on the legal and other conditions in these 3 countries. and basically was together with the team, was learning, first of all, about this completely new field from different angles. So I was working with the lawyers who were dealing with the legal aspects related to refugee protection, human rights protection. I was working with persons, the public relations officers who were doing lots of public awareness trainings at that time in the Baltic countries, for example, for school teachers to introduce issues related to human rights in Lithuania. So it was really, really a very much historical moment that I could participate. And when I came back, Lithuania actually started its system in 1 year time. So for me, the most important in terms of functions, in terms of what I acquired, was that I think at that time, and I can proudly say that because it's true, it's a fact, I was the only one probably in Lithuania really trained in these matters, because I had an opportunity to participate in various trainings for judges, for border guards, for migration officials that were happening in the Nordic countries, because it was a regional office. So I was probably the most trained, the most competent, even though I was very young. I was just a student, but I already had a lot of knowledge by virtue of actually working in this office and seeing how different persons are working, not only lawyers, but also other professionals.
Just for my interest, in what year were you when you had your internship?
It was 1996, so it was very, very long time ago.
Yeah, sorry, your university, I'm not sure how to call it, a course year.
It was the 4th year, so it was, I graduated in 97, so 96 was just 1 year before graduation.
Yeah, wow, that's impressive, really. And I also wanted to ask you, would you dare to say that perhaps the application process and the internship in general are quite different today, considering the fact that, well, your internship was a while ago, and also the fact that actually Mykolas Romeris University is very active in taking in the interns from STEP.
Yes, of course, in terms of the process, I, of course, don't remember what was exactly there at that moment, but it's very clear that at that moment, there were not so many students who would be willing to go abroad. It was something quite unusual. And if I compare with the situation now, there is a huge competition. Lithuanian interns, they have to compete basically with the entire world. And if you want to get into really reputable organizations, be it in the private sector, maybe even easier in private sector. But if you want to get into some organizations which can provide the best experience, the global experience, there are huge competitions. So in that sense, it's one has to prepare. It's not going so easily, and of course you have to compete. So you have to be prepared. You have to know the languages. You have to present yourself, and also to look for those opportunities. So I think that's very great that they all have a program, because that kind of facilitates that process. Otherwise, you are against all the world, against the competition from all of the other countries. So.
Thank you, Lyra. Gabriel, you already talked a little about your experience here in Lithuania, but I'd like to come back to it a little. Maybe you could comment on also the tasks. Were you prepared? Do you expected what you got, or was something off? Just in general about the experience here.
Mm-hmm. So if you ask me specifically about the tasks I got at work in the law firm, actually it was nothing unexpected, because it was, for me, the first time I've been working in a small law firm, but it was nothing unexpected. It was actually things that are very useful and that should be basic lawyerly skills for everybody. Some things I did a lot was just filling out European claims. I think this is just actually everyone should definitely do this at least once a lifetime if you are interested in law and want to do something with law. It was most of all, it gave me an impression of what real lawyer's work actually looks like, because before I've been working in a large law firm, which obviously is not the same because they used to be very specialized. It's something different if you really work with one person who is the concrete lawyer who goes to court, and you have clients that call and tell you something, I need this and this, and then you just really have to research and find out what they actually want. I think this is actually, I just realized I never wanted to become a lawyer because similarly, maybe to Lyra, I was always more interested in international organizations. And I can say I still am more interested in international organizations, but this experience actually made me understand how beautiful it can be to be one lawyer who has to defend several clients. Particularly, we had a lot of clients in the transport sector, and it's very satisfying to help out a specific person with a specific problem and actually see the result immediately in front of your eyes. That's very satisfying. So that was the part I liked most out of my work. And in generally, I also need to really praise my colleagues because they were really, really friendly and hospitable, and they also invited me for dinner and for brunch, so I can really not complain. They were extremely friendly.
That's amazing, really. I also wanted to ask you, so could you safely say that you'll be able to use these newfound skills in your future studies and your future career?
Definitely. Yes, definitely you can use these skills. I think this is without any doubt. But I really want to highlight, it's not just these skills you actually learn in the law firm, but it's more the general broadening of your understanding and the general experience, which is really also very worth it. I think it's not something very new, but the soft skills you acquire are very valuable. It's not really, I think the problem with soft skills is you don't really feel that you learn a soft skill, but it's still, you actually feel that what you're doing is actually improving your personality and making you just go a step forward. So this is really useful. I think there are absolutely no reasons not to do an internship abroad, to be honest.
I would totally agree. And Lyra, talking about your career, how did the internship help it? In what way? If it helped.
Actually, that's the reason I think why I was invited to here, because my internship led to 17 years of my engagement with the United Nations, both here in Lithuania, but also for a short while in other countries. So it was a directly connected to my internship. Upon my return to Lithuania and upon my graduation 1 year later, I was employed as a legal advisor in the UN office here in Lithuania, because, as I said, at that time, I knew most out of everybody here in Lithuania, because I was dealing with those matters for almost 6 months on a daily basis in the field, which was at that time very new for Lithuania. So it actually determined my career, and even if it started incidentally, of course, I never regret it. It was really some kind of nice sign, nice opportunity for me, because otherwise, I think it would have been extremely difficult, if not at all possible, to get into the UN office, because it's a global organization with global competition. Even up to now, there are very, very few Lithuanians who are the officials of the United Nations. We have quite many experts in Lithuanians who served for a short while in the United Nations for some consultancies, but up until now, there are very few Lithuanians. So I think without internship, it's probably 99% that I would not be able to get into this organization. So 17 years in different UN organizations, that was the direct result of my internship. And of course, I'm very happy about that.
Thank you. And a little more sentimental question about both of your internships. Perhaps you have some fun or warm memories that stuck in your head from the internship. Maybe Gabriel, you could start. It's very fresh still.
Yeah, yes, I have to think, but actually I think I have several memories that really stuck in my head. Yeah, first of all, like in general, I really loved my life in Kaunas. It was awesome. I think it also has to do that Kaunas is a very lovely city. And personally, I had a lot of, I socialized a lot with students from other countries because we were in a similar situation. So what really stuck in my head is also just the connections with the other young people around.
Okay, thank you. And Lyra?
Yes, for me it's more difficult to remember, and usually, you usually remember those situations that were kind of difficult. But yes, I would say that I have very nice memories of the team. Of course, it was a bit of a shock for me in the beginning when, on Friday, everybody said, okay, goodbye, have a nice weekend. And nobody would ask in the Nordic culture, at least at that time, how I'm going to spend that weekend and that I'm completely alone and so on. So it was a bit of a shock. But in principle, during that time that I stayed in that office, like from the up to the highest level to the head of the office, people were so friendly, and we really made a friendship for life, basically. Later on, 10 years later, I was asking for references from some of them, and with some of them, we still keep in touch even so many years later. But if I would think of something that really stuck in my mind, in my memory, was something very different for me. And this is related to the civil-military cooperation. So when I was during my internship, I got a possibility to participate in one of the, I don't know if it's called table game or nowadays it's called something different, but it was a simulation on the table by the military and civilians of some kind of humanitarian, military or peace enforcement operations. And that was very interesting because I've never heard of anything like that. I only heard about operations, trainings on the ground, but not when there are these table games where serious people from national security, from military, when they from different countries, they play that. And why I wanted also to mention this, because I was so interested that later on, when during my career in this particular organization that I spent around almost 10 years in Lithuania, already working in Lithuania for this organization, for 3 times, I participated in international peacekeeping forces trainings. And as I say, I served in the military because in these 3 times, probably it was around 3-4 weeks, that I was living in the military in our Rukla camp, and training as instructor, training the US, Danish, Romanian, Lithuanian, Polish military under the under the direction of civilian military, so-called CIMIC, so civil military cooperation. So I really enjoyed, to direct the military guys, at that time. And this is something that that I learned for the first time, about this kind of operations, simulations, when I was in Stockholm. And second, it wasn't a funny thing, but it's now funny to remember. When I was going back from Stockholm to Vilnius, I had a lot of luggage, not because I went shopping when I was in Stockholm, no, but I accumulated lots of books, materials that I wanted to bring with me back. Of course, that was different time. Now you could just send by email. At that time, there were lots of written materials. And of course, I appear in the airport with all this luggage, and I have a huge overweight. And I thought, okay. And they said, either you get rid of it or you have to pay. And of course, it was a lot, that you would have to pay for this extra weight. Not like now with Trainee or with other airlines, which is maybe affordable. So what I did, I thought that somebody, would help me, and I could just ask somebody, some people from business class, maybe that travel with a small suitcase, or just, with a small bag, to take some of my books. And you cannot imagine, nobody wanted to do that. Nobody wanted to take anything from me. And I couldn't understand what is the problem, because, it's a help, and it's books. It's not something, But of course, now I understand that people were aware, because maybe, I carry some drugs or as a young person, or if there are some other items, prohibited items, and they would get in trouble. So I really had a very hard time. Now it's funny to remember, but actually some people finally, they agreed to take it. And I remember that I was buying some kind of gift for them while in the plane, just to say thank you. There is this duty free at that time in the plane, and I bought something just to say thank you for that, because they really helped me a lot. Otherwise, I would have to get rid of all my papers that I was carrying. So this is something that maybe not was so funny, but this is something that I remember up until now.
Thank you very much for the beautiful memories. We have a little more broad question about actually the program, and in your opinion, are we heading in the right direction with this program? And do you wish there were any different things, in particular, for example, in the process, and maybe you have any suggestions what could be different and therefore better?
Yes, I have some ideas on this. I think the process is such as perfect. I can say I have a personal preference for internships that do not take too long, because we see today we have one who has been 6 months, and I've been just 1 month. Actually, it was even 3 weeks. I think it's always, for me, it was good that it was not too long, because since I'm still studying, and almost, I think we'll probably, by the way, graduate in 4 days. But still, I'm still studying. So it was good that it actually fitted into my study schedule. But the process as such is, I think, perfect. I don't have any ideas on that. But I think what I really appreciate is that I think the step gets, even every time it gets more international, because I saw that now recently it expanded also to the Southern, Northern American continent, which is very impressive.
Lyra, do you have any ideas?
Well, I would just say that the mere fact that you have the program, which actually facilitates the possibilities to get internships in other countries, in other continents, I think that's great. So whichever small things could be always improved, I think that's the best, because as a small country, we have not so many always opportunities to compete, and it's easier for Swedish students, or maybe for German students, or for some other country students to go somewhere, because some of the countries, they do even special programs. For example, the German government has programs with the United Nations. The Nordic countries, they have so-called junior professional officers positions when they fund young people to get into organizations. So we still do not have, as Lithuania, these kind of programs. So in that respect, what you have at ELSA, I think is great, because it's not that easy to get into really reputable organizations. So whichever, I think I just need to congratulate you and to encourage people to use this opportunity, because when they have to do it from zero, from scratch, on their own, and to get through the program, I think it's a big difference. I was very lucky just, to get that invitation and to get into this excellent internship on my own, basically. But nowadays, I think because of very high competition, it's excellent to have programs that facilitate. So you just need to use it. I think that's simple as that. And maybe if I may just reflect on the duration, because what Gabriel said, 1 month, it depends, it depends, because here in Lithuania we had different situations. Sometimes students work. So then I always, and they say, well, we cannot leave for a long time because we study and then we are already employed. So it's very difficult to get out of the country and to combine it. But, if you have the possibility to combine, let's say, what the area in which you are already working, the area that you are studying, then even I think the employer might be interested actually that you go into some another country and you get experience, that maybe you raise your qualifications. So it will help in the work. So sometimes it's just a matter of agreement and discussion. And in particular, of course, that works for short internships. But if you want really to get the very broad experience and really to integrate in the organization, of course, then the longer period is maybe more useful, because maybe it was not so difficult for Gabriel, because he had exposure internationally probably quite a lot before. But when I went on my internship, I did not really have a lot of international exposure. I was not staying in other countries. I was not traveling so much before I went to this internship. And it takes time to somehow to get into. Of course, you have to have courage, you have to be open so that you pick up on things. So for me, I think if it would be just 1 month, probably it would not have been so much useful. But it depends, for every person, it's, I would say, if it's possible, stay longer. If not, then even 1 month is really very beneficial for anybody.
Yeah, I would like to add, I think this is actually very, very accurate. I can only agree 100%. I think one aspect I also really wanted to point out is that the STEP internships they have a very wide range of different activities, because they are like UN organizations, but also classical law firms, also some universities. So the choice is actually very wide. I think this greatly speaks in favor of the STEP program.
Thank you. And actually talking about the encouragement, because we're already running out of our time, what would be one tip that you would give to those considering the traineeship abroad?
I think there are many things I would like to say, but I think first thing that one needs to start is to ask himself or herself, just ask you, what I would do if I would not be afraid. So the answer would be clear, and I would just encourage not to be afraid, because when you are not afraid, then all the world is open to you, and you can do everything. But of course, you have to make this first step to say that I'm not afraid, and even if I'm afraid, step over it, because you can. And if I could do it in very, very early times, just almost after Lithuania regaining the independence, when the world seemed to be very, very far from us, and I was very, very shy, and my English was far from good at that time. But I took this risk, and this risk paid, 500%, not paid off, not just 100%. So don't be afraid, and just make this first step. And if you are over it, you can do everything.
Yeah. My idea is I can only suggest people to go to places they don't know already, because I can really say that there was a lot of choice at the step. So I really thought, should I go to Italy or to Belgium? But actually, I decided against these places that I already knew, because I really wanted to go to a place that I don't know. And I didn't know a lot about Kaunas, to be honest. And it really paid off, because I know that I had a very much better experience in Lithuania, in Kaunas, than I would have had in any place that is culturally too similar to Austria, or that I already know too much. So I think always go for the more exotic thing. That's my personal suggestion. Exotic in the sense of unfamiliar.
Thank you once more. And I'm afraid that's all for this time. And I thank Lyra, I thank Gabriel. It was really an honor to speak to you, to get to know you. And hopefully we'll be able to meet once more again, and very, very soon. For all the listeners, stay safe. And be sure to apply to STEP to try out your capabilities in foreign field. And also, I'd like to invite everyone to another STEP event that is organized by ELSA Mykolas Romeris University, where you will be able to hear about the program from the perspective of actually the law firm Teisės Truba. And for sure, follow us on all the social media. And thank you once more, and have a great day.